So, hello and most welcome to 1693 of the series. And we will today commence a new article. Revelation and Revolution. Friedrich Engels and the Apocalypse by Roland Boer. At the University of Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. We'll begin with reading the abstract. Also mention the number, currently at 1693 of the Heidegger series. 1693. In tracing a relatively unknown but important feature of the work of Friedrich Engels, this article offers a critical commentary on his lifelong engagement with the New Testament book of Revelation. Beginning with material from his late teens, when he was undergoing the long, slow process of giving up his Calvinist faith. Engels used a text for humor and satire, for polemics, and as a way to express his own exuberance. As the years unfolded, he would come to appreciate this biblical book in a very different fashion, namely as a historical document that offered a window into earliest Christianity. through 3 essays, one of Revelation, another of Bruno Boer, and the third on early Christianity. Engels developed the influential argument that Christianity had revolutionary origins. In closing, I ask 3 questions. What is the abiding relevance of Engels's work? Where does it fall short? And what tensions does he open up in his thought by allowing ideas and beliefs to influence history? Similarly, Isaac Newton, in his old age, busied himself with expounding the revelation of Saint John. That the millennium was here depicted in earthly colors goes without saying. Even Revelation cannot rest content with such heavenly delights as sitting with a bare bottom on a damp cloud, twanging a harp with more or less gory hands and singing hymns to all eternity. The changing nature of Engels' attitudes toward the revelation of Saint John, the Divine, the last book of the New Testament, signals the transformations in his own relationship with Christianity, from the intense Calvinist faith of his youth to his appreciation of Christianity's revolutionary origins and potentials. To uncover the importance of revelation for Engels's own thought, I offer a critical commentary on his various dealings with that text. I begin by tracing his early uses of revelation, especially in his letters, his poetry, and his writings on Schelling, in which we find Engels deploying revelation for the sake of humor. Satire and his own exuberance, but not, it should be noted, in any way as a politico-theological tool. From that point, we leap to three crucial essays from his mature years. One of the book of Revelation itself, another on Bruno Boer, and another on Christianity. These three essays show a very different historical approach to this text that, by this date in Engels's view, provides the earliest evidence for the revolutionary origins of Christianity. Because Engels's biblical work is relatively unknown, except perhaps the essay on early Christianity. My engagement requires a good deal of exposition as a prerequisite for any critique, which in itself will be concerned with the abiding relevance, if any, of Engels's arguments. A soft spot for apocalypticism. For almost 2 millennia, Revelation has been a favorite of all manner of Christian movements. many of them quite revolutionary. Full of the rich imagery between the final battle between good and evil, the beast and the whore of Babylon. The four horsemen and the seven scrolls, the Lamb and the New Jerusalem. Revelation continues to be a ready resource for people who expect an imminent end to the world, who are oppressed and who are keen to proclaim themselves prophets and gain followers. As far as I can tell, none of these reasons counts for Engels. In fact, Engels's solid Calvinist upbringing would not have emphasized his text much, this text much, suspicious of enthusiasm and millenarian frenzy. Calvinists prefer to focus on predestination, the task of the elect, the evils of the damned, and matters such as justification by faith through grace. Of course, God would eventually destroy the damned, and Jesus would return. But Calvinists did not need him to do so now to save them from an intolerable situation. Yet Engels did resort to apocalypticism, especially the theme of the final battle between good and evil in all its gory detail. What catches my eye is that Engels uses revelation in a number of ways, playfully as a critical satire and as the positive celebration of a new era in his own life and perhaps for Germany. As for the first use, we find a sustained play with revelation in 2 letters to his one-time close friend and pastor, Friedrich Engels, one from the beginning of the correspondence of February 19, 1839, and the other from the last letter dated February 22, 1841. In the first letter, Engels expresses mock horror at the news that his good friend, the pastor, actually plays cards. Engels throws a few biblical curses at Graeber and then portrays a vision like that of John the Divine, or for that matter, the prophet Ezekiel. What does he see? It is a great final battle between the King of the Orient the Prince of the Occident and the Prince of the Sea, a rather more homely version of the battle between the Archangel Michael, the devil, and the beast of the sea in Revelation 12-13. Seven spirits appear modeled on the 7 angels of Revelation 8-10 and 14. But they turn out to be a little more earthly. Faust, Leah, Wallenstein, Hercules, Siegfried, Roland, and mio sit. The whole parody becomes even more complex with the crisscrossing of Old Testament allusions, the children of Anak, the letters on the door in Hebrew, and being struck dumb. The point of it all was that even though they may have brought the world to an end, nothing will stop the card players in their evil pastime. All this is good fun. The second letter is different. For its playfulness is a rather poor camouflage for a more serious tone. Engels engraver, his school childhood friend from Wuppertal, had become estranged since the time when they began their epistolary debates 2 years earlier. For now, they are taking different theological directions. In a curious intersection where the apocalyptic battle at the end of the age wraps up a friendship. We return in this letter to the final battle between good and evil, between God and the devil. On the one side stand evil Straussian and Hegelians. On the other are the less capable orthodox names we hardly recognize now, such as Thorlog Hengsberg et al. . Yet, despite portents of the great battle, such as the Earth's eclipse and the storm raging through the forest, Graeber has not yet readied himself for combat with the critical, speculative devil and his enormous following. The problem, it seems, is that Graeber has already disengaged from their debates. Engels berates Graeber for his calm and detached writing, as if nothing can stir the placidity of his orthodoxy. Engels, by contrast, wants a fight. And David Strauss, author of the bombshell known as Das Leben Jesu, is the super weapon with which he will knock down Graeber and any other orthodox champion. But Graeber, it seems, has already declined the struggle. We have already slipped from the playful use of the final apocalyptic battle to a more polemical use. The next occasion on which Engels engages revelation is more fully polemical, and the humor starts to have some bite. It is in the long poem from 1842, the insolently threatened, yet miraculously rescued Bible. For one who decided to give up his aspirations to be a poet in favor of direct political writing and an increasing fascination with martial matters. Engels has written a poem that is quite good. It is a narrative poem written with Edgar Boer, brother of Bruno and member of the Free, and its satire owes much to the style of young Hegelian polemic. The poem sets a cracking pace, and the reader is drawn into the story. It begins with a job-like opening in which Satan slinks his way into heaven, upsets the heavenly chorus, and demands access to Bruno Boer, a radical biblical critic and leading young Hegelian. God asserts that for all Boer's research into the Bible, for all his doubts, he still remains faithful and will come through to truth as he sees the flaws of philosophy. The devil is not so sure and secures a chance to test Boer's faith. Unlike the outcome in the prologue to the book of Job, Boer does succumb to Satan, although it takes some persuasion. By the time Boer begins lecturing again, he is a servant of the devil and sets the pious and atheistic students against one another. All of this eventually leads to a final confrontation between Hegel, the young Hegelians, and some French philosophes, such as Voltaire on one side, and the pious defenders of the faith on the other. Steeped in the terminology from the book of Revelation, this final battle shifts back and forth. The young Hegelians build a fortress out of the books they have written and use the books as missiles against the attacks of the pious believers. Despite many heroics and pinpoint accuracy with their projectiles, the Hegelians fare badly until they dump the weak-kneed devil. He is all talk and no action, and call for reinforcements. Danton, Edelman, Marat, Napoleon, Robespierre, and Voltaire appear. Boer takes charge, and they root the pious who now flee heavenward. Hegel urges the atheists to attack heaven itself, and he leads the charge. But just as they are about to succeed, Boer has been dismissed from his teaching position. In dismay, the forces of chaos flee, and the host of heaven pursues them with glee. And we need to put a stop there, I'm afraid, just after glee. 6. There's some interesting quotes. There are quite a lot of them in this text, I'd say. The first ones were on page 3. We go down a bit there. A bit more. But here we have a soft spot for apocalypticism. It's almost as hard to pronounce as ecclesiastical. A very tough word. My take here is full, the second sentence, full of the rich imagery of the final battle between good and evil, the beast and the whore of Babylon. The four horsemen and the seven scrolls, the Lamb and the New Jerusalem. The note from this sentence is it's full of very interesting binary oppositions. And we also have 7 scrolls. 7 has been a recurring number. You might remember from previous walkthroughs, 7 has a tendency to occur. And if we continue to page 4, just go down until they say stop. There. And I was thinking here of the Calvinist who do not embrace the polarities, as we might know. They are famous for being very cool down, neo-Christians, if you like. There's neither locale in their churches, and there is no place for exalted emotions. Engels' solid Calvinist upbringing would not have emphasized this text much. Suspicious of enthusiasm and millenarian frenzy, Calvinists prefer to focus on predestination, the task of the elect, and the evils of the damned, and matters such as justification by faith through grace. And here we have something quite different from what you saw in the previous quotes. Here we have a DNA mechanic development, and predestination can be changed for determinism. And in the end, which is mentioned even in the coprolates down, it is almost like the Calvinist wouldn't even need Christ. He doesn't have to come back and destroy the damned. The resurrection of Jesus, his return. The least warm of the Christians to be a rather mean and very close in detail to the newly founded mechanistic worldview. Few of the different congregations would come as far as the Calvinist to abide to determinism, I would say, and lack of healthy, vibrant oppositions. And if we go down, a bit more, and here we have some interesting names coming up. And even a warrior, Faustleer Wallenstein, a general from the 30th Boer, Hercules, Siegfried, Roland, and Neocid, the third. These are all forces of the good in different shapes. And for some odd reason, they number exactly 7. And here is in this text established and very interesting, healthy, I would say, contrast between the oppositions. And if we go over to page 5, and at the very first sentence, there was a second, go up a bit there, the second sentence on page 5. I think I have to go up a bit more. To the top of the page 5. Up, up. There, in the second sentence here, in a curious intersection, where the apocalyptic battle at the end of age wraps up a friendship, we return in this letter to the final battle between good and evil, between God and the devil. And then it gets even more spicy. On the one side stand evil Straussians and Hegelians. On the other are the less capable Orthodox names. You see, there is an establishment of the two sides here that always goes for making an interesting, lively composition. This reminds me of Rudolf Gachet, which I can highly recommend, and one as mistake he pinpoints to is the belief that two oppositions makes either less, and maybe the gravest misunderstanding is that having two oppositions doesn't mean that something could be 100% evil or 100% good. And that is the inference of nullification. They seem to be on opposing sides, and therefore they will become something like 50-50 in the mechanistic take. But there is nothing of the kind. It could be pure evil and it could be pure good. It could also be pure aggressor, even though there are defensive sides to it. The only time you cannot have this pure 100% is when you only take, as we went through earlier, and I can refer to those when we speak about the DCCT, the coin that depicted Caesar Flavius on one side, the deceased son of Domitian. One side doesn't take away from the other side. It didn't diminish the emperor's power on earth, the divine son. It can still be 100% and only. And this is one of those things that are hinted to here in this text, unintentionally to some way, I would say also. Although it's very interesting. And you also see the fight in this metaphor going on between the combatants or the belligerent parties. I think that makes it even more interesting. It'll be interesting to know what does Leben de Jose was by Boer. Maybe some comments from Kalle. What do you think about this oppositional character in the writing?
Hello.
You need to take the video away to assure the good sound.
Okay, as you wish.
Perfect.
Like you, Hans, I do love the title of spot for apocalypticism.
Very good, Kalle. Could you please raise your voice and be sure that you direct it to the webcam?
Okay, I do also like the title, A Soft Spot for Apocalypticism. Do you hear me?
Yes.
But I didn't really answer your question. Yes, there are a lot of polarities in this text, like the seven angels that fight against the seven, let me see. So where do we have it? Danton is on the Edelman Marat. Okay. No, they appear more than they appear often. Like this you mentioned. And they are falsely or etc. They are against these seven. Erdmann, Nietzsche, Klick, Nietzsche. What I found curious is Engel's name itself. You think about angel, and I'm certain that Derrida would have played with the pun. I know that he played with the name Hegel. Hegel, he said some French pronounce it as Hegel, and it sounds like eagle in French.
Aigle, yes.
Hegel. And here angel. I don't know if these seven are some kind of alter egos for Engels. Paus, Lear, Wallenstein, Hercules, Siegfried, Roland, Mio, Sid. So angels, I don't know if he remained a Hegelian for all his life. I think he here he was also Hegelians, and he himself was on their side. But later on, he seems to leave the Hegelians. And as you mentioned, Calvinists did not have a soft spot for apocalyptic themes.
Yes,
And it
indeed.
is that since he grew up with Calvinists, it's strange that he went to read Revelation on his own. He did not have the book of Revelation in his blood, so to say. It was not really part of his Calvinistic upbringing, so he went there for his own love or curiosity. What do you think, Hans?
Well, I see. I was thinking that would be my summary for next, but I will mention it briefly that there is an apocalyptic tone in communism, which he established later, where it all ends with a revolution of the proletarians. So you have a similar development within communism, Marxism, as you know, he later hang out with Karl Marx. So there is much inspired, and it's a combination also of the Hegelian thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. This is a core of Marxism. Often they say it's turned upside down, but it is still the turn of oppositions. And it is inevitable. It's interesting how Calvinistic in some ways Marxism was managed to integrate an idea of history as being inevitable. And all these things would happen. The takeover of the bourgeoisie, like in the French Revolution, turnover of the bourgeoisie, and so on in different oppositions, different anti-thesis. And finally, you can call it the apocalypse, the proletarian revolution that equals anyone and also take down all of society as we used to know it.
Yes, and I thought about the book Gla by Derrida, 1975 book, where he plays with the name Hegel, Eagle. Is that Derrida pokes fun at Hegel. In this book Gla, you have 3 columns. One is a text by Hegel, one by by Genet, the French author Genet, and a third column is mishmash of Derrida's comments.
Yeah.
And sometimes there even appears a 4th column. So Derrida wants to show that the idea of synthesis is not linear. So there is always insertions here and there.
Yeah, indeed. And what did you think about that nullification, the idea that if you have opposition, a thing cannot be 100%?
Yes, absolutely. So we think, let's say an opposition like man on woman, and that's one possible opposition is that there is always a trace of a woman in a man and vice versa.
Yes.
And so there are no the oppositions need each other and they complement also each other. And what would be the result be? Like a child, it's to think that the child is the sum of the opposition is rather, I don't know. It's a simplification. And so No, you need, as Michael Chris notes, you need oppositions. They make the life.
Yes, we need, and he also mentions the loss of good, because if we have 100% good, we don't have good. And I think that's very interesting. How very good. I do like the text. I think we have to end here. We have passed a bit more than 1 hour mark. With your permission, Kalle,
Absolutely, absolutely.
I will stop the recording presently. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you for listening, and have a very pleasant morning, afternoon, or night, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.